Today presents Strike Battleship Argent, Book 1 in the Starships at War series, by Shane Lachlan Black. Copyright 2016.
Chapter 12. Sir! The Marine snapped to attention and saluted. The officer returned the gesture. What's on your mind, Corporal? Major Lucas Moody was standing at the lectern in the squadron briefing room working his way through equipment readiness reports. The unsheathed sword of the Marine Mechanized Infantry's crest filled the wall behind him. Sir, well, see, the guys and me, we've been talking and— Just say it, Corporal. The 2nd Marines are a team, commanding officer to gas can. The Major's encouragement didn't seem to do much for the young Marine's uncomfortable expression. Well, sir, I found out the skipper's just a little older than me, and I was wondering if that's, a normal thing in the fleet? He scratched the side of his nearly shaved head with a confused look. You have plans to join the officer corps, Marine? No, sir. I'm pretty happy just being one of the guys. He chuckled nervously. My mom would disown me if I messed up my marks in basics, sir, but I was just wondering because I went to flight school with Jason Hunter. I was one of the men he rescued when he won the Sky Shield Legion. He charged an enemy frigate squadron in a single-seat Yellow Jacket fighter. They went this way, he went that way. He made it. They didn't. I didn't know that, sir. Most people don't. The skipper isn't the type to brag. There's no man alive I'd rather have on the bridge of any ship I'm taking to war than Jason Hunter. If you went missing, Marine, he'd bring every man and woman in this command with him looking for you. For whatever it was worth, the look on Major Moody's face seemed to provide the young man some comfort. The corporal stood at attention again and saluted. Moody returned the salute again, and the Marine dismissed himself. Chapter 13. As heroic as Major Moody made the young captain sound, at that particular moment he didn't look like he was ready to slay any dragons. Captain Hunter was pacing the bridge of his ship while his executive officer and signals officer watched with concerned expressions. I'm tempted to call it a ruse, he said, looking up at the massive tactical display of Gitairn Sector 8. On the port side of the Argent's avatar was Alert 3, consisting of 2 fighters and a Tarantula Hawk gunship. On the opposite side was an indicator for the last known position of Nemesis 8, an electronic warfare corvette stationed nearby to assist the much larger battleship in the event hostilities broke out. And by the looks of things, Hunter thought, they just might. Although his flight decks were still at general quarters, Hunter had ordered the rest of the ship to alert Condition 1. Unidentified contact Kilo X-Ray 1 had neither advanced nor retreated in the last 3 hours, and Hunter remembered well the lesson he learned in officers' training about crews that remained at high alert for too long. At this range, there's no way to tell. I can't give you any details on the hardware they're using, or why we're getting such weird signal attenuation, Zoni replied. They've set it to automatic broadcast, so either they know we're here or they know we're coming. Still doesn't make sense, Honora Doverly countered. They called us by name, no designator. There wasn't even an attempt to conceal our identity or theirs. They just fire off this minimum bandwidth signal, hoping we're here to receive it and then tell us to run? What about them? Barker's asteroid isn't exactly well known for its 5-star accommodations. I'll give you that much, Commander, Hunter replied with his back still turned. If I was crashed on that spinning junkyard, I'd be more concerned about survival than setting up warnings for ships I don't even know are— It hit Zoni and Jason at exactly the same moment. He turned around and her face gradually lit up into a delighted expression of sudden discovery. What if the Admiral knows we're coming? Hunter pointed at Lieutenant Tixia in a wordless gesture of agreement and turned to his executive officer, whose frown indicated she wasn't quite as enthusiastic about their electromagnetic sleuthing skills. A flag officer would not set up an emergency beacon and start broadcasting ship names in the clear, Doverly said. Look at this. She rose from her seat and walked over to stand by the captain at the forward bridge tactical display. Here is Alert 3. They got the same signal we did only a few hundredths of a second sooner. Nemesis 8 is over here. They got the same message a few ticks later. That means if Barker's asteroid is broadcasting the signal, it's omnidirectional. With all due respect to the Admiral and the Captain, sir, it takes a special kind of imbecile to start listing ship names in a clear frequency omnidirectional broadcast with hostiles in the area. Yeah, the next thing you know, they'll be asking us to confirm our position, Lucas Moody added. He was leaning against the edge of the main bridge entrance portal behind the tactical console and munching on a piece of celery. Exactly, Honora said. Whoever that is, they aren't Skywatch. All right, let's come at this from the other direction. Kilo X-Ray 1 is between us and the signal. They must be getting it too, but they've been sitting out there for 3 hours. They're not moving. No emissions, no energy readings, nothing. What's their purpose here, drawing a line and daring us to cross it? Why wouldn't they respond to the signal? Maybe the signal is bait, Zoni speculated. Could be, but that ship is no match for Argent, Lucas said. Why draw a line in the sand if the guy's just going to push you down and step on you? Maybe that's why they're trying to stay out of reach, Hunter mused, looking back up at the tactical display. I wish I could get a line on their weaponry and loadout. If that's a missile cruiser, a couple squadrons of jacks could carve it up like a pheasant. But if they're loaded up with energy weapons, how sharp his teeth are only matters if he bites us, Commander Doverly said. Want me to take a flight of paladins out there and kick the door in, Skipper? Moody asked. I've got a tougher job for you and the boys, Major, Hunter replied. When the time comes, I want you to set a squadron down on Barker's asteroid and find out who's playing with the radio. Bridge to sensor section. The overhead intraship comlink switched over and a pleasant female voice answered. Sensor section, Ensign Kavanaugh. Do we have anything on the Dunkirk we can get through passives? Radiation trail, reactor signature, last known course, anything? Negative, Captain. Unless we go active, we can't turn the clock back that far. Nemesis 8 could probably do it, but covering the sector yard by yard is going to take a while. How much of a while? At least a couple of days, Captain. Gitairn is a big box of rocks, and every asteroid out there is a special signal-reflecting, interference-producing snowflake. Hunter ran his fingers through his light-colored hair. Well, I'll say this much. Whoever decided to drive me up a wall today sure planned ahead. Bridge out. The bridge crew quietly continued monitoring their instruments and waiting for orders. Hunter paced. All right, we didn't fly all the way out here to watch the paint dry. I want the Dunkirk found, and right now the prime suspect in her disappearance is Kilo X-Ray 1 bearing 319. Hunter fell into his command chair and punched the intraship. Alert 3, this is Charlie Oscar. I want a loud ID pass on target Kilo X-Ray 1. Acknowledge. Yes, sir, came the confident reply. Hunter switched the transmitter. Nemesis 8, blanket the sector. I want everything dark. A moment later, the tactical display went haywire. Ships began appearing and disappearing all over visible space. Zoni indicated loss of contact with the Barker asteroid radio signal. As the tiny electronic warfare corvette began filling the spectrum with noise, the Argent bridge crew watched carefully as the trio of attack vessels designated Alert 3 veered towards the unidentified contact. Chapter 14. Yeely was engrossed in her work. The Argent engineering section had to be seen to be believed. Reactor 7 towered over the assembly chamber where the chief engineer had set up shop. The lieutenant was seated at a workstation observing changes in the chemical residue from alternative fuel mixtures and absently poking at a salad. After her quiet and unheralded arrival as the new officer in charge of the entire engineering staff aboard the Argent, the other crew members weren't too sure what to make of her. It took some time to get her to mention her last name was Curtis. Some of the junior officers suggested a nickname of Annie, while others preferred Girl with a Gun, as she seemed to be permanently armed with a heavy blaster disruptor pistol in a low holster on one side. Engineers were almost never armed. For one thing, they had enough tools and equipment to carry around. For another, most of the engineering crew had long since let their rifle and pistol skills wither. As crew aboard a Skywatch starship, they were required to pass basic training, but once they got their ship and assignment, most found themselves far too involved in their work to worry about regular visits to a rifle range for training. Besides, there were always sentry marines posted. During the first few shift changes, and especially during the battle drill, Lieutenant Curtis had started a habit of wandering around the section and arriving on the scene of less than successful efforts by other engineering crew members precisely when the raised eyebrow of a senior officer would do the most good. She would rarely speak. She would only observe, add a quiet and then leave. At first, the engineering crews thought she was being critical, but she never followed up. After a few rounds of this, they weren't quite sure what she was doing. The results, however, could not be argued with. Engineering crews would start obsessively checking their own work to avoid the nod and the from the chief engineer, and in the process, in the space of scarcely a day, both efficiency and productivity had started to climb. Without a word, the OCE officer had turned the sprawling department into the beginnings of a self-checking, self-supportive team. All this was just fine with the lieutenant, of course. What she really wanted was peace and quiet so she could learn the ins and outs of the Argent's reactor array and power systems as quickly as possible. One thing her new ship was not was a Yellow Jacket fighter. The assembly bay for multi-axis laser-activated Mala fusion reactor number 7 was appropriately spacious. Most of the atmosphere-exposed surfaces were coated with white anti-static paint to help prevent charge buildup from the ionized coolant mixture. The von Mansfried design reactor chamber resembled the base of an enormous grain silo surrounded by waist-level control consoles and the emergency isolation shield mechanisms. 2 levels of gantry walkways were constructed overhead, each designed to grant crew members access to the baffles, electronics access panels, and emergency facilities at assembly levels 2 and 3. Each was 35 feet higher than the one below it. A ladder extended from Gantry 3 to the chamber escape hatch at the ceiling level more than 12 stories above the deck. It was impressive enough on its own. What Yili and all other chief engineers knew was politicians and press were always humbled when they learned Citadel-class capital ships like the Argent had 7 more just like it, each one capable of a sustained output of 40 megawatts and theoretical burst capacities of up to half a gigawatt. Reactor 7 was currently quietly operating at a fairly reserved 1.5% of full capacity, with most of its energy being used by Flight Deck 3 to cycle fighter and gunship battle screens for testing. Other engineers occasionally wandered through the Reactor 7 assembly room, most carrying man-portable pieces of testing equipment from one place to the next. Some of the heavier stuff was mounted on wheeled trucks for convenience, and some of the really heavy pieces of equipment and tools were transported by driven vehicles. Unfortunately, none of those crew members, engineers, or patrols noticed the shadowy humanoids gathering on Gantry 3. Their plans had been underway for several minutes without detection. Some of the Marine Guards had been lulled into a false sense of security by the formidable nature of the automatic intruder alert systems, and as a result, they had allowed their powers of observation to become rusty. The fact that everyone would later agree saved the ship was that Reactor 7 was also being guarded by Major Moody's low-key guards for Lieutenant Yili Curtis. "Intruder!" Yili looked up with a start and saw one of the incognito Marines dive towards the deck alarm. The soft sounds of beam weapons fire filled the chamber, and blinding lances of white light rained down from the overhead gantry. The young Marine never made it to the alert console. The boarding party knew they had only a few moments' delay before the entire ship would know they were there, so they put those moments to deadly use. The other of Lieutenant Curtis's undercover guards actually managed to return fire before he was driven behind an auxiliary power generator to avoid being vaporized where he stood. The next group of crewmen to enter Reactor 7's assembly chamber came under immediate attack. The one leading the truck carrying oil and fuel residue from Paladin landing mechanisms was instantly vaporized by a center-of-mass shot to the chest. The others had more fortunate cover positions behind the truck and managed to escape the chamber altogether. The lieutenant moved quicker than most would have believed she could. She ducked under her workstation and swiftly moved towards a cover position behind Auxiliary Power 2. She was only 3 yards from safety when one of the intruders confronted her at deck level. All Yealy could see was a dark humanoid form of some kind wearing what might have been an all-black tack suit. Whatever it was, it seemed equally surprised to find anyone so close. The intruder drew a bladed weapon and lunged, driving the point down towards Yealy's back. Argent's chief engineer ducked into the motion and slammed both her fists down on her opponent's instep. She actually felt at least 2 bones break. There was a muffled cry of pain before both of them crashed to the floor in a rolling struggle. The lieutenant's combat training took over, and in moments she had driven the intruder's knife into his chest. She dragged the body with her behind Auxiliary 2 and activated her comlink. On the bridge, Zoni was busy punching a hole through Nemesis 8's interference to establish a solid channel with Alert 3. When the indicator for an intraship hail directly to her designator came through, she answered it right away. "Bridge, signals." Yealy's voice was an urgent whisper. "Zoni, this is Yealy in Reactor 7. Intruder alert. I say again, intruder alert. They've shot 2 of my men and wounded a 3rd. I need Mu to deploy assault teams at all the strike points on the port side of Reactor 6. Acknowledge." "Affirmative, Jack 4. Hold the fort. We're sending the cavalry." Zoni switched intraship communications over to wired channels and activated an EM communications blackout. Dominique responded with a series of security options, which the signals officer activated on her own authority. "Captain, we have an intruder alert in Reactor 7. Communications are black. Engineering is requesting backup." Hunter turned to Mu and shouted, "Go!" The Major scrambled back down the Deck 1 corridor towards the magneto lifts, activating his comlink as he ran. It detected the ship's communications blackout and shifted to one of 3 pre-selected frequencies not affected by the electronic noise the rest of the ship's repeaters were broadcasting at maximum power. "This is Tango Charlie. Repel borders Reactor 7. Repel borders Reactor 7. Assault armor to all strike points. Honora, sound general quarters all decks. Intruder protocols. Stand by environmental defenses. Neek, let's start with Protocol 1. "Affirmative, Captain. Signals has already activated all automatic security protocols." 3 cheers for efficiency, Hunter said. "Zoni, give me a tactical view of Deck 29, port side aft. Overlay locations of all biological life signs and then subtract anyone wearing a comlink." "Acknowledged. Tactical on screen." The captain had just gotten out of his chair to take a closer look when intra-ship wired communications channels sounded the alert tone. "Bridge, this is Skywatch. Kilo X-Ray 1 is on an intercept course bearing 321 range 7 million miles and closing. Zoni, scrub Alert 3's ID pass, scramble formation and stand by for attack orders. Bridge, CIC, missiles in space and tracking, vampire, vampire, vampire."
The rest of the story is only 1 keyword away. Visit jumpline.click in your browser. New keywords are activated every day. Get access to our entire catalog of science fiction, fantasy, and gamelit.